Hello, everyone. Welcome to Forge and Anvil, the podcast where we hammer out uncomfortable conversations about culture, politics, theology to sharpen ourselves for the race set before us. My name is Connor. I am host of this podcast. So sorry for those of you on the live stream that we kept waiting. We had a little bit of an error come our way. So Kathy Barnette was going to be joining us tonight to talk all about her involvement with Vivek Ramaswamy's 2024 campaign, as well as, of course, her past involvement in her own political races. But it turns out Kathy is sick in bed, and we had a communication error, so we did not know that. But either way, we have a stand-in for Kathy. So Matthias, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, so my name is Matthias. I am Kathy's advisor, so we are on the grassroots side of Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign. I was in the campaign since the second month of the campaign, so it's been 7 months now. And yeah, sorry about those who expected to see Kathy tonight. I'll do my best to fill in.
Awesome. Well, welcome, and we appreciate you jumping on with us. And then I am joined by Jason from Dear Woke Christian. So, Jason, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience for those who don't already know you.
Hey, everybody. It's me, Jason, Dear Woke Christian. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you. Matthias, looking forward to having a conversation with you on this evening. And I, of course, manage the channel, Dear Woke Christian, and dearwokechristian.com. I discuss lots of different topics, but primarily critical race theory and social justice and how they impact Christ's church. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Well, welcome back as always, Jason. So yeah, we'll go ahead and dive straight into it. So Matthias, I was planning on having a friendly interview. We're definitely fans of Kathy and what she's done in her advocacy for the sort of freedom movement, whatever we want to call ourselves, kind of a mixture of libertarians, conservatives, anyone that is just not okay with the the current regime that we are living under. But that being said, I did have some pretty blunt questions. Wanted to make sure that we weren't giving softballs here. So I'll ask you a few of them, maybe save some of them as well, in hopes that we might be able to get Kathy back on sometime when she's on the mend. But our prayers are with her. So chat, Feel free to send a prayer to Kathy, and we'll hope that she recovers quickly. But yeah, I mean, maybe first, Matthias, go ahead and just let us know kind of how you got involved in politics and with the Vivek campaign, as well as working with Kathy.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in France. I'm a dual citizen. And I came to the US in 2017. I went to college to a very small liberal arts in Ohio. And that was pretty much my introduction to politics. I didn't know much, but I knew a few things. One of them is I was proud of American values, and I was very grateful to be able to take advantage of all the opportunities that this country was offering. And I quickly realized, though, that most of my classmates weren't. And that was my introduction to politics. You know, I saw a very big identity crisis in the youth in this country, and that's what really got me into it. So upon my graduation, I interned at the Heritage Foundation, where I first saw Vivek, as he came and presented one of his books, Nation of Victims. So I was very impressed with the man. I didn't know he was going to run for president. But when he did, I started listening to him, and he was, to me, the one who cast a vision for the country. I see a lot of other candidates that, are running away from something. We in the Republican Party are very good at criticizing what is wrong, pointing the finger at what is wrong, and running away from it. But I saw in Vivek someone who was pointing towards something and wanted to run towards something. And I really liked that. And when the opportunity came to get involved with the campaign, I didn't think twice.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for that background. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I think Vivek has said a lot of great things. I'm one of the few individuals that knew about Vivek prior to 2023. So, most people are asking the question of who is this guy? Where did he come from? I'm one of those individuals that actually saw him on some of the other projects that he was involved in with the Daily Wire, and some of those individuals, some of his early kind of appearances, interviews. I think when he first announced Strive, he was kind of on a lot of those different podcasts, kind of announcing what Strive was.
There we go.
Go ahead, Jason.
No, you had kind of frozen up a little bit, so I was.
Oh, gotcha. Well, hopefully, internet doesn't fail us tonight. So, but yeah, so I actually heard of Vivek in short. So, but many individuals in our audience did not know who Vivek was, and of course, for that reason, a lot of people are asking questions. I think a lot of people have concerns with Vivek. He seems like a great guy, but we want to make sure that we ask the hard questions so that we can properly vet people that we may be giving our votes to. So one of the first things, one of our audience members actually on Twitter specifically was asking about a comment that Vivek had made about supporting transgender individuals in the military. So obviously, Matthias, you're just a stand-in for the campaign. I don't expect you to have the exact answers that maybe Vivek would give, but if you could just do your best to be his surrogate for tonight. Do you happen to know, a lot of people gave pushback on his support for transgender individuals in the military. So why does he support transgenderism in the military, or has he changed his stance?
I think he was a little bit misconstrued. He was asked about it, and he was asked about transgenderism and transgender people in the military. He said he's against it. He's been asked to clarify this later on, and he said he was against it. The main reason is he says that transgenderism is a mental issue, and people with mental issues should not be in the military. I think that's the short version of it. This is not the one policy position that I'm most aware of the specifics, so I don't want to get into too much detail. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that is the short summary of it. He's been asked to clarify. He did, and he specified that he is not in favor of transgender people in the military.
Okay, awesome. Well, moving on then, a lot of people are kind of frustrated because Vivek is obviously running to be president, but a lot of people are complaining that they don't see Vivek really hitting former President Trump, on the campaign trail. And to that reason, a lot of people are feeling sort of like maybe Vivek's just running a sabotage campaign against Ron DeSantis, or maybe Vivek's not actually seriously running for the presidency. Maybe he's running to be Trump's VP pick. Of course, he's said in multiple interviews that that's not what he's doing. But a lot of people have that concern. So what would be the campaign's response to those concerns?
Well, and he's been asked about it because everyone wants him to criticize Donald Trump. And the truth is, he doesn't have a Trump derangement syndrome like a lot of people do in this country. And he says it himself. He has areas of disagreement with him. And if it was another moment in this country where there wasn't a whole political apparatus attacking him, he would probably insist on those differences more. But in his view, it is not what the country needs right now. The country needs someone who wants to unify the country. We have deep political divisions in this country right now, and using the political system, when the party in power is attacking the opposition, using the Department of Justice, Vivek felt the need that the best way to go about it, in terms of what is best to do to unify the country, was to defend him. So that's what he's been doing. When asked on the specifics, he said where he disagrees with him, what he would do different. But yeah, a lot of people have been trying to play this gotcha game with him, and try to say, put words in his mouth. But if you actually listen to the specifics, he said a lot of things that he would do differently than what Donald Trump did, and other things that he plans to do differently that Donald Trump plans to do as well.
Yeah, and I think that I've heard some of those criticisms, of course. So I wouldn't say that I'm one of those individuals that think he's never hit Trump, but I think a lot of people are concerned because they see sort of the vitriol that so many other campaigns have against one another on the debate stage, and many of them, of course, directing their fire towards President Trump. Because the reality is, based on polling, which of course I take every single poll with a pound of salt, not just a grain of salt, pound of salt. But regardless of that pound of salt, it is showing that President Trump has a commanding lead for the GOP nomination. So to that end, what is the Vivek campaign strategy to unseat Donald Trump and actually win the primary? Is that something that that you guys have put much energy towards? Right now it seems like everyone's kind of gunning for the number 2 spot, but what does that strategy look like?
Well, no, I think we need to work hard and let the people know that Vivek is the option that is best. He is the best candidate to advance an America First agenda. That he will take America First further than Donald Trump ever did, and the reason for that is he wants to win with a moral mandate. He has the opportunity to win in a landslide. He is reaching out and getting young voters behind him. He is getting people that never donated to the GOP before behind him. I don't know if you've heard the statistic, but for most presidential campaigns, the percentage of donors that have never donated to the GOP before and that donate to this campaign is usually between 2 and 5%. And for Vivek, it's been around 40%. So we see a lot of traction from people that have not felt necessarily attracted to the GOP in the past. And, when you have someone that is speaking our values so clearly as Vivek is, and that has this advantage of being young, having fresh legs, and casting a vision for this country, I think the best way to go is to keep working hard, as we've been doing, especially in the early states, place well and get momentum there.
So how do you think Iowa is going to end up going down ultimately if you were to kind of look into your crystal ball?
Well, Kathy and I have been spending a lot of time in Iowa, and the people are responding very positively to it. Caucuses are always unpredictable to some extent. It is not a primary. Caucuses are very different, and so the results are much harder to predict in some sense. So we were trying to get on the grassroots side people activated, and we're confident that we're going to achieve a good result there.
Awesome.
So I just wanted to jump in. Going back to the question about how to unseat Donald Trump, do you see Vivek's age as being part of your superpower, for lack of a better term, or part of your strategy? Because he is considerably younger. So because of that, he does have he can appeal more to the younger audience and such like that, rather than the old guard, 50 plus candidates that we've been running. I'm sorry, even 70 plus candidates that we're running now. But you look at somebody who's considerably younger. What do you think about that?
I do think it's an advantage to reach to young voters more. Maybe makes it more attractive to young voters. But that I think the main point of it is for someone who actually believes that America's best days are ahead of them. It may be easier to see that in someone whose best days himself are ahead of him. And I think this is one of the things that is strikingly different between him and a lot of other candidates. So yes, I would agree with you. I don't know if it's a superpower. I definitely think some people say it's a disadvantage because he's never been in politics before. Some people see it as an advantage because he can reach to young voters better. Truth is, I think the vision is what's most important.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that you don't have to be involved in politics to do well in office. Obviously, I mean, President Trump was the best president in my lifetime. Now, granted, I'm not very old, and that's a very low bar. So, that's not saying much. But regardless, Trump was not a politician prior to holding office. So, to me, I would say it's funny when people try to use that as a disqualifier for Vivek, because it's like, seriously, guys, like, you don't understand the base if you think that we want a professional politician. So to that end, I know that's a criticism people have thrown at DeSantis. Now, I personally don't think that DeSantis is an establishment figure. A lot of people have accused him of that, but I think he was a great governor. Now, I've had some complaints about his campaign and how that's being ran. I think that it could definitely be a better campaign. But what has been sort of the viewpoint, the opinion of DeSantis and his campaign from the Vivek campaign?
We don't talk too much about other campaigns. Of course, we're competing and we want to be respectful. But he's one of the most prominent political figures in the country, and you know, I don't want to criticize. I don't want to compliment. We don't really talk about other campaigns inside the circle. So
Yeah, I think that's smart. It's good to just stay focused on what you guys are doing and not necessarily look to your left or right. So, yeah, I think that's wise. So one of the things, so again, our audience is definitely a heavy church attending audience.
Right.
We're definitely we definitely consider ourselves to be a Christian podcast. Of course, we don't always tackle everything that's from a theological perspective all the time, 100% of the time. But much of our audience are Bible believing Christians, and one of the things that I think can be frustrating at times is those who are sort of plugged into the 2024 election cycle. Many of them understand that Vivek has Hindu beliefs. And to that point, Vivek oftentimes says in the campaign trail that he believes in God, he believes in the importance of family. And I think many people feel like that's pandering towards the Christian voting base. So I'm not saying that they're correct on that. I'm more just telling you what the criticism is, and asking what's your response to that. And then, of course, I know again you can't speak directly for Vivek personally, but what does Vivek believe about God, and specifically, who does he believe Jesus to be?
Good question.
So I haven't had the conversation about Jesus with Vivek, but I know he believes in that there's one only God, one true God. And the good thing about you said there were critics about him to be pandering to the Christian base. Truth is, freedom of religion, yes, freedom of religious expression is an integral part of the First Amendment. It is not pandering to a base to actually defend the Constitution. Vivek is a constitutional conservative, and I think it only makes sense for him to make it clear that he will defend religious freedom in this country.
Yeah,
I think it's a good point. Good answer. Sorry.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add to that, Jason?
No. I'm fine with it, and I can appreciate. I've heard him speak on that matter, so I do believe I understand what he's doing and what he's saying. As Matthias has said, he's a constitutional Republican, so I think that's something we have to keep in mind. Like he's aiming it towards the Constitution, not against the Constitution. So he's driving us closer and closer to what he believes is a constitutional answer. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But at the end of the day, we're not trying to elect a pastor in chief. We're trying to elect a commander in chief, and I don't need someone to be my pastor in this office. I need someone though who will defend religious freedoms in this country. I need someone who will defend freedom of speech. I need someone who will defend the Constitution, and I believe Vivek is the guy to do that.
Of course, I think the concern more from our audience would come down to, his worldview, how his worldview is going to shape how he views, for example, the sanctity of life, or how he views the sanctity of marriage, or some of those issues that he will be governing. He will be a magistrate in charge of setting policy and setting an example for the country. And I think that's more of where the criticism comes from, is less of that people want him to be a pastor, more of that they want to know that his worldview is going to be solid, and that he's going to have principled stances, and he's not going to go to and fro with whatever the demands of the public are at the time.
Absolutely. Luckily, he's been asked about the specifics of those questions, and he's unapologetically pro-life. And he says it is an issue that, now that Roe v. Wade's been overturned, and rightly so, comes back to the states. He's been supporting state legislators to pass pro-life policies. I don't know if you know that Iowa passed pro-life legislation about a few months ago.
Heartbeat bill.
I believe, you can fact check me on that, but I think he was the only presidential candidate who came to the Iowa State Capitol that the day of the special session that passed this into law. So
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head on that, but I do know that many campaigns have at least vocalized their support for that, which is good. Honestly, at the end of the day, I want to see the majority, if not all, of the Republican side supporting bills that can help save more lives. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that he's been vocal about that. So to that end, I guess I'm going to follow this trail of thinking here for a bit. So should Vivek win the presidency and we see states like Colorado and California legislating abortion up until and sometimes even after birth, what would be the President Vivek's sort of strategy for handling those states? Because obviously at the end of the day, the Christian perspective is a belief that that's murder, and obviously it's a whole constitutional question that we've been battling on the left and the right for many decades, and it's not going to be solved overnight. But how would Vivek handle some of the more barbaric legislation being passed in some of these blue states?
So I don't exactly know about the specifics, but I can say that, like I said, he's been very vocal in that he would support state legislature to pass pro-life bills. And he's not going to make any promise that he needs Congress to pass. So he's focusing on what he can do as a president. And that is either a question that comes back to the state or with very large majority of Congress, right? So he will encourage states to pass pro-life bills as he's been doing, and yeah, I think that's also part of the importance of casting a vision. Is we need to revive the ideals that made this country great, and part of these ideals is all the values that come with it. And if we do actually come to a revival in this country of national identity, etc., maybe those issues will come easier, and we'll find a lot more agreement on it.
Yeah, I hope you're right on that. I hope you are, because that's something that we're praying for. I'm an abolitionist. I hope that abortion goes the way of the dodo bird. I know that's not going to happen overnight, but that is my prayer personally. So either way, I appreciate your transparency on that. So well, Jason, I guess I'll let you jump in here if you have anything additional to add to that.
No, I really do appreciate Matthias taking the time to step in. I would love to continue the conversation maybe when she's on the mend. I would love to have even more and find out a little bit more about how the campaign is going and how you see particular battle states and such like that. Now, I did know someone asked a question earlier. Well, not really asked a question, but they expressed a concern in the chat that they thought that Vivek was using a lot of the terminologies and a lot of the approach of former President Obama. And do you see that? Do you see that as true, or do you see that it's just, look, we're all using the same words, but we have different meanings, or we all have the same meanings? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I've seen a few videos of people comparing speech about, like, Obama saying this is not a Republican or a Democrat idea, and then Vivek saying the same thing 8 years laid. Well, the truth is, if there's an issue and it's not a Republican or a Democrat idea, and you're trying to unify the country, you might as well say it. I definitely don't think he's copying Obama. I do think he's a very eloquent speaker, and as much as I disagree with a lot of things that President Obama stands for, I think we can agree that he was a very eloquent speaker as well. As far as I'm concerned, that's as far as the comparison gets.
Yeah, and I will say, to be fair to Vivek on that, I will say that like you just said, if there's one thing that you can compliment Obama on, it was the fact that he was smooth. Honestly, he was a smooth talker. He was a great performer when it comes to being in front of an audience and in front of a camera. And at the end of the day, if we have a right-wing Obama, that's not necessarily a bad thing, so long as his belief system is better than Obama's and how he legislates is better than Obama. But I know he did make the one reference about the skinny kid with a funny name, and I think Obama said something similar, and that's a lot of where people get their concern from.
And I think that was mostly a joke, but
I'm sure it probably was. Given the fact that he's been spotted rapping Eminem lyrics and things like that, I'm sure Vivek knew what he was doing in that instance. Right. But that, and I will say something just to remind the audience too. again, I'm not complimenting Obama. I think he was a terrible president in terms of his policy. But his first campaign, he very much was running on a unification ticket. He very much was talking about how racism was a thing of America's past, and it wasn't until he was up for re-election that he really busted out a lot of the racial dialogue and started being very divisive. I think that he's slightly hoodwinked a lot of people with his first go at the presidency. So that is something to be reminded of. At least just on the surface, I think that was sort of his approach in his initial run for the presidency. But I wanted to move on. So another thing that I think Vivek's going to have to tackle is the issue of Social Security. Now, I'm a young guy. Personally, I'm okay with getting rid of Social Security for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather just not have that be taxed. I would rather just have my money, and I think I can invest it a whole lot better than the federal government. But the reality is, Social Security is an issue that causes candidates to win or lose elections, and it's very evident that boomers and other older Americans will not stand to see their Social Security touched in any way. But at the same time, we're almost $34 trillion in debt, and it's completely unsustainable. So how does Vivek plan to address this and other bloated spending?
Yeah, you know that there's a solution that no one is talking about. It is we have to grow our way out of debt. Our GDP growth has been very low in the past few decades, you know, and if we can achieve 5% GDP growth again, then we'd grow ourselves out of this problem. So how do we achieve that? Well, one is unshackle the U.S. energy, right? Like we gotta get rid of the regulations. We gotta burn coal, frack, drill, and unshackle U.S. energy that will grow our economy. We gotta stop paying people to not go to work. You know, this is ludicrous. And lastly, we need to unshackle this economy and stop people to stay at home.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a great option. I do think obviously there's spending that needs to be cut. But
For sure.
I think at some point we're going to have to seriously consider as a country doing some form of a sunset to Social Security. I realize that's not going to be a popular idea, and maybe that's not something that anyone should mention on a presidential campaign. But you know, guys like me, you know, we don't need Social Security. We just want our tax money back so that we can invest it ourselves and maybe honor our promises to some of the older generation. But that's something that seriously needs to be addressed in the near future. But either way, I appreciate that. So I want to briefly touch on foreign policy because obviously things are escalating like crazy all over the map right now. We're kind of on the edge of what seems to be World War III, which is horrifying to think about. Right. So what overall is Vivek's approach going to be when it comes to foreign policy?
Don't bring us into World War III, and that would be
good start.
That would be the right frame of mind. You know, we want a stable world, right? And I'm not going to get into too many specifics because, of course, there's a lot of questions and he's getting interviewed every day about it. But we got to be very intentional in what we're doing with our military and getting into no-win wars and spending trillions of dollars is definitely not helping us. It hasn't helped us with Iraq. It hasn't helped us with Afghanistan. And we ought to be very careful of what we do with our military in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And of course, to bring it back domestic, because again, they're hand in hand, foreign policy as well as our domestic policy for how we protect our own country's borders. I've obviously heard Vivek lay out his plan for how he plans on handling the border crisis. But go ahead and just lay that out for our audience, for those who have not yet heard it.
Yeah, you know, he was the first presidential candidate to say that he'd put our own military on our own border facing Mexico. We have about 100,000 Americans dying of fentanyl every year. We have an invasion at our southern border, and we got to do something about it. And the idea is, if we can use our military to go defend someone else's border on the other side of the world, we surely should be able to use our military to protect our own border.
Yeah, I completely agree. What about the northern border?
So he's recently said that you know, he wants to get ahead of that problem. Basically, the idea is, if we seal the southern border, then the next port of entry will be the northern border. and we ought to do something about it. To be completely honest with you, I haven't gotten the very specifics of his position on how he plans to do that, but I know he wants to get ahead of the problem and not let it become a problem that we're running away from, like in the southern border right now.
Yeah, I appreciate
Good
that.
catch. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to pardons, many people have been clamoring for the pardon of Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. Has Vivek made any commitment to what kind of individuals that he plans on pardoning should he become president?
I know for a fact that he committed to pardon Julian Assange. I do not know about Snowden. But that was a while ago. I heard him say that he didn't know the specifics of the case, but that he looked into it. And to be completely honest with you, I have not paid too much attention of what's come out after that.
Okay.
That's okay. Yeah.
So I'm gonna list another controversial name because I wanna really pick at a scab here. What about Derek Chauvin?
Oh, wow.
I don't want to put words into his mouth. I don't think he's been asked that question.
Okay, well maybe ask him because it's an interesting idea because obviously it's a very controversial one. I think should Chauvin get pardoned, I think that we're going to see a whole lot of craziness. But I definitely think that was a miscarriage of justice. Now, I'm not even saying that Chauvin shouldn't get any punishment. I think that can be debated, but I think the severity of the punishment was a miscarriage of justice because that's been proven over and over in court that Chauvin did what he was trained to do. Now, you can hate it. You can think that he did a terrible job, should have done more, whatever you want. But I think the degree, I think he was charged with multiple cases of murder. I think one was manslaughter, like involuntary manslaughter, but then also like intentional homicide. And of course, I'm no legal scholar, so I'm not saying the convictions properly. But either way, so he unintentionally killed a guy, but then also intentionally killed a guy. It was George Floyd.
It's like scholar, so it would be a very interesting question to ask him.
Yeah, well, maybe get back to us on that. We'd appreciate.
I like that. That would be fun.
Yeah, awesome, cool. Well, one last thing here. We had in the chat, Carmen asked the question: is the Constitution based on natural law or human rights? So maybe you can speak to how Vivek bases the Constitution.
Okay, can you expand on the question?
Yeah, so they're asking: is the Constitution based on natural law or human rights?
Well, we have rights that are endowed by our Creator, and this is how our Constitution came about. So I think that the question is pretty straightforward. That the answer would be pretty straightforward. I don't think he's been asked that question. So again, I don't want to put words into his mouth, but that would be what the only logical answer to me.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Matthias. I really appreciate it. We appreciate you jumping on. I know we kind of just threw a lot at you all at once. We went everywhere, but we wanted to make sure that we got some of our questions out. I've definitely got a list that I saved for Kathy in case she's on the mend and can join us some other time. But either way, we do appreciate you jumping in. It's not easy to to fill in for someone who's already been a surrogate in the first place for a campaign. So I think you did a great job despite
outstanding job
despite the task. So. Thank you so much.
Very much for having me, guys. And again, sorry we couldn't get Kathy on. We'll try to work something for a later date.
Yeah, no worries. And if you have anything to shout out, Matthias, feel free to go ahead and do that before we kick you out.
Kathy just launched her new podcast, her own podcast. It's called the Kathy Barnette Show, in which she addresses a lot of questions that people in the chat or people in general are asking themselves today. So if they want to check it out, it is on Apple Podcasts now.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, Matthias, and we'll hopefully be in contact real soon.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, friend.
All righty, everyone. Well, there was our interview with Matthias. Definitely spontaneous. You never know how things are going to go down when it comes time to hit record, but we appreciate you all bearing with us, and hopefully we can get Kathy on some other time soon and reschedule. This was actually the third time rescheduling with Kathy, and I almost didn't promote it for that reason. I thought I just don't want to keep, teasing the audience, but got confirmation just the other day. And then Matthias has been the one actually communicating with me on Kathy's behalf. And unfortunately, I guess she was sick and he didn't know, or some sort of communication error happened there. But either way, we appreciate him coming on. So be sure to check out Kathy's new podcast and be sure to give that a follow. But yeah, Jason, I just wanted to turn it over to you. What's your initial thoughts on just the whole interview and kind of where we stand with everything we just went through with Matthias?
No, I thought it was a good interview. You had some great questions, Connor. I need to step my question game up. However, I hated that deep down inside, I was like, I don't know if this is exactly what Vivek would answer or even Kathy would answer. I don't think that he gave answers that were totally in left field. And I think he definitely gave the spirit of their answer, if you will. However, I do think there's questions that, like, boy, I would love to hear what they would actually say about this and not their emissary. But he did a great job. He was definitely a sharp individual. They got some good people on their team. So prayerfully, we'll get another opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jason, what was your first time hearing about Vivek? I'm just curious.
When he when he went on the Breakfast Club.
Mm.
So literally, I don't know, like 2 months ago.
Maybe. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so or whenever it was when he was on the Breakfast Club. So let's just say the summer. So
Gotcha.
maybe 4 months ago, but not that much longer. All I do is remember I mispronounced the guy's name, and my comment section and my live chat gave me unholy grammar lesson about how I was mispronouncing the guy's name. I forgot what I was saying it was, but it was pretty bad though. It was horrible. Because it was like my first time hearing about him. Oh, you know what it was? It was when he went to Chicago to get a haircut. It was that little interaction right there. I was like, oh man, I should do a video about this. I think this is kind of cool. And so that was the first time I'd ever. Yeah, that was the first time I'd heard of him. So I flying blind, and I really bumbled and messed up his name a lot. However, I thought that the way he handled it by going into a community, into an area that was not necessarily favorable toward Republican candidates or really any candidate that's not a Black candidate, was going to be interesting. And I thought he handled himself really well. The questions that were asked of him about the border and such like that, I thought were actually really good. And I thought he handled it well. So that's why I thought that he was going to be that was going to be a good opportunity to respond or talk about him. And it was.
Yeah, I agree. I wish more Republican candidates would do it. I understand it's scary to approach, an area that's not favorable to you, and especially when, Republicans are automatically labeled racist no matter what they do in the media's eyes. But, there's a lot of individuals, especially in the inner cities, in the Black community in Chicago and New York, both currently, that are absolutely upset about illegal immigration and how it's affecting their communities right now. And that's honestly a great opportunity for people, to go in and rack up some votes where we otherwise would not see them. Now, maybe in a presidential campaign, it's not the best place to go to Illinois. It's a state you're probably not going to win no matter what as a Republican. Maybe that's a little hard for the electoral college to spend a lot of resources there. And same with New York. But for individual campaigns in the congressional level, definitely something that people need to maybe start focusing in on, because I think Black men especially, they really are not handling the transgender push well. Right. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there to maybe expand, even if it's by 1-2%, those margins really matter in these high stake elections right now.
That is true. I also think that by letting people know, like, hey, getting out there, getting out of the cars, out from behind the camera, and getting out, shaking hands and kissing babies, it allows people to actually see, like, oh, this is a real human, and he understands my plight, and he listened to me, and such like that. That goes a long way, because again, we're dealing with a televised government where lots of what we're dealing with our government is through a screen of some sort, but to actually shake your hand, you come into my neighborhood, you're hanging out. I mean, yeah, you're still gonna probably lose Illinois, but it won't be because you didn't go and introduce yourself and just plant the seeds that will maybe in 50 years, Lord willing, will allow another candidate to win Illinois. But even more than that, to provide people with a hope and maybe inspire them to do something different for their own communities. And however the elections go, but they can do something different for their own communities. Who knows? You might inspire somebody like that.
Yeah, I agree. And, that we need to play the long game. That's something that the left is totally unafraid of doing. They don't mind throwing $100,000 into a super red area just to see what kind of data they can collect for, what that could look like as a future prospect. And part of that's because the right does not have the mega donors. We don't have the Silicon Valley paychecks coming in our way. It makes it a little bit harder to do some of that stuff. But that's why you don't have to necessarily spend a ton of money, just maybe a bit of time and minimal resources, just to some flights, the gas to get there, to maybe start making some inroads that could pay off, down the road. Because Lord knows we need to start being much more intelligent and strategic with with how we campaign, because we're losing this battle, and our institutions, there's a lot of rot in our institutions, and I'm going to use that as a transition,
as a segue. I see where you're going.
If you see where I'm going with this, Jason.
I see where you're going.
So I told Jason right as we got started that since things were already going wild with our original plans, that we just go all the way. And I'm going to go ahead and get Jason's spontaneous reaction to an article that I saw earlier this week.
Okay.
This is by Megan Basham of the Daily Wire. Many of you probably know her reporting. She does a fantastic job. And I will say I have not read this article in length either, so bear with me as I go through it. But this is about Christianity Today. So Christianity Today staff made extensive campaign donations between 2015 and 2022. All went to Democrats. The media has long framed Christianity Today, founded by Billy Graham in 1956, as America's most influential Christian news outlet. The Washington Post, for instance, regularly describes it as evangelicalism's flagship magazine, as does the New York Times. A review of federal election records, however, indicates that the views of the magazine's leadership and staff may be far out of step with ordinary evangelicals. Between 2015 and 2022, 9 Christianity Today employees made 73 political donations. All of them went to Democrats. This tally includes President and CEO Timothy Dalrymple, who gave $300 in 2 separate payments to failed Georgia Senate candidate Sarah Riggs Amico. Amico's platform, which includes protecting abortion, quote, without exception, end quote, and repealing the Hyde Amendment to allow federal tax dollars to fund abortions, contrasts sharply with the views of evangelicals who overwhelmingly say abortion should be illegal in all or most cases. She is also at odds with traditional Christian beliefs when it comes to gender, sexuality, and religious liberty. Along with declaring herself a staunch LGBTQ ally, Amico promised to support the Equality Act, a bill that the Heritage Foundation warns would threaten parental rights over children who believe they're transgender. The conservative think tank has also said the bill would disseminate conscious rights for medical workers and cancels religious freedom. Southern Baptist Theological Seminary President Albert Mueller put the Equality Act in even starker terms, saying, quote, it represents the greatest threat to religious liberty in the United States in our lifetimes, end quote, and would, quote, totally transform the United States as we know it, end quote. So this is a long article, and we can continue on if you want, Jason, but I'll go ahead and stop there for now and just get your initial reaction to Christianity Today and their political leanings.
Anybody that knows me knows that I have zero issue. Let's just go ahead and say Christianity Today is not Christian today. Let's just be honest. And I think the more we say that and we just embrace it, like this is a pagan magazine. It's the same as, Tech Today or Time Magazine, whatever. It's a pagan magazine. Let's just stop lying. Now, they might use a veneer, they might use Christianese, and they might actually have an article or two that is pretty Christian. That doesn't mean anything. Christianity Today is not Christian today. Just, it's okay. Now, with that being the case, Christians have to accept that we have to take what they are giving you with a grain of salt, because as we see here, they're clearly giving with one hand and taking with the other. So we can't just be fools and say, oh, because they have the term Christian in their title, or because they have some conservative or somebody who's blatantly Christian as a contributor, then we have to keep them. No, we don't. We really don't. We really, truly don't. And I think but one day soon, prayerfully, we'll notice that our Christian flagships, as they call it, a flagship right here, they're just running the wrong flag. That's just it. They have a different flag. Just admit it. And but if we challenge them and ask questions and require them to explain, why is it that 9 of your staff people made 300 donations and they were all Democrat, to politicians that had completely anti-Christian viewpoints? Why is it that was the case? I think if we require from them to answer that, we will see some kind of success. Or if nothing else, we're going to challenge them to ante up and become honest that you're not Christian.
Yeah.
You're just Christian name only.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, we need to stop supporting them until they show true repentance as an institution. Because, I mean, unfortunately, I think a lot of these institutions are just running on fumes, and they're just running on the good graces of individuals that are not paying close attention. And then, of course, there are some individuals that are hoodwinked by them because the rot didn't happen overnight. We talk about Big Eva on this channel sometimes. Jason, you talk about Big Eva probably much more than we do. But Big Eva has become a term thrown around because of outlets like Christianity Today. And it's unfortunate to see that we have to, not only do we have to contend with the secular world, but we have to battle with individuals who are, I would say are also secular, but they're not claiming that they're not wearing that jersey. They're wearing our jersey. And every time we go to run a play, they're the ones that are tackling us. So
no, I agree. And I think we need to be mindful of that. Like, pay attention to who tackled you. Pay attention who's throwing the darts at you. Pay attention to that. Because, as somebody said right here, Christianity yesterday, I think that's what we'll start calling Christianity today. It'll be called, affectionately known as Christianity yesterday. And many others in Big Eva and Christianity in name only are doing more harm than good. They're doing more harm than the secular world, because we know where they're coming from. We know what direction the world is coming from. We just didn't expect you to be coming from behind us or in our blind spot. So I think we have to keep our head on swivel, stop supporting these institutions. They have to earn our support, and earning our support means we need much more clear understanding about what you believe and who you support. But I think we'll see that soon enough, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. So the magazine originally was founded by Billy Graham in 1956. So I mean, what do you think? So Big Eva is a term that's thrown around a lot, but I guess how do you define Big Eva, Jason? Because there's definitely a lot of people that we could make the argument for, but what's your personal definition?
All right, so Big Eva, I refer to as the industrial church complex. It's the machine of church. When you look at church and you see it, when you see Andy Stanley, Stephen Furtick, John Gray, when you see a church service from them, and you feel that little cringe, like, oh, that's so. When you watch Church by the Glade, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're doing that, or whatnot like that. That little cringe right there is that little like, oh, that ick as the kids like to say, that is the smell and the waft of Big Eva, the industrial church complex. So, and we're going to stay here in the United States because, of course, the industrial church complex is global. But here in the United States, when we see that large church that doesn't honor Christ, that doesn't make much of the Lord, that the primary focus of the worship service is the person and the people sitting in the pews and in the seat, not the Lord. That's, in my understanding or my definition, that is the industrial church complex. It's just a concert that you pay for afterwards rather than buy your ticket to get in. So that would be how I would define Big Eva or the industrial church complex.
So this might be an impossible question, but how do you think Billy Graham would feel if he were to come back in the flesh today and see Christianity today and what it's become?
Okay, whenever we hear these type of thought experiments, I always wonder. There's a couple of things that I wonder: is he just popping up right now today, or has he been alive up to this point? Is one of the questions. So is he just like right now, Billy Graham is here, or are we saying like Billy Graham has been alive all the way up to this point? What are you?
Let's do both.
All right, if he just popped up right now and saw Christianity Yesterday magazine, I think he would be really weirded out. Like, this is not the magazine that he intended. However, I'm not 100% certain that if Billy Graham was actively a part of it and was still, in good health and whatnot, I don't know if he was living through it. I think the slow boil would have taken him over because, he was a part of the big tent revival. It was about the big church experience, the big, the large salvations, the large coming to Christ, whatnots like that. So I think he probably would have got swept up in it over time. If he just popped up here today, I think he would probably be like, what's going on? This is not the magazine that I started. That would be my assessment.
I think the interesting thing, it totally does. And I think you may be spot on with that, because unfortunately it's hard to, it's hard to completely avoid getting sucked in when the waves of culture are all going one direction.
Yeah, for sure.
And that goes for me too. I mean, the reality is it's if you don't remain grounded in the word, as well as having, a body of believers around you that are also grounded in the word, it's really easy for things to trip you up.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that tripped me up a matter of a couple of years ago that I think completely differently on now. And that's just everyone's growth and sanctification. But I think what's interesting is the fact that they're donating to these individuals that now are very openly Marxist. Much of the Democratic Party is. And it's just interesting because Billy Graham was very much against Marxism and communism. And he spoke very, very strongly and openly against it. Have you seen some of those dialogues?
I can't say that I have, because I wasn't a big Billy Graham fan, nor didn't do a lot of research into him. So I wouldn't be surprised though, but I don't know that.
Let me see if I can pull some up, because it's interesting to see the stark contrast. He called it Satan's religion. Oh, now I'm getting errors on my end here. Let me see if I can find it here.
And Shara left a comment right there as well. Billy
Graham said Hillary would make a great president. He also said abortion is okay in certain circumstances. Really? And I'm similar to you, Jason. Billy Graham's kind of the household name that was thrown around a lot growing up for me, but it was not one by any means that I would say, it's household name because what household did that name not pop up in from time to time? But I can't say it's something that I was incredibly familiar with his work. But either way, I think Christianity today. So one of the things that I've heard from a friend is that if a institution does not explicitly call themselves conservative and actively continue to espouse conservative principles, and they are undoubtedly going to drift leftward. Would you agree with that, Jason?
Oh, hands down. I think there has to be a constant constantly reforming, ever just, setting your sights on the North Star and just always checking yourself, always.
Yeah, I agree. What ways do you advise institutions? Because I think one of the things that I'm really curious about is how we can build new institutions that are able to withstand the cultural rot that is constantly showing up in all these institutions that we used to trust 100 years ago, but now are completely gone by the wayside.
There's no way. But we can't build anything because we are the rot. So we have to be mindful that this is going to be the Lord's work. So if you're married, I'm married, we're both fathers, we both realize that we're not able to make these kids behave like they're supposed to. We're not able to really truly disciple our wives. We have to constantly go before the Lord for the wisdom in order to lead our households to his glory and for his honor. So at the end of the day, I think we can't look at quote unquote institutions, colleges, magazines, churches as flame proof. They're not bulletproof. They're constantly going to need to check and keep checking all the way until the day of Christ. So I think for institutions, so let's just say we started a company, we need to keep in mind that this company at any moment could slide off the rails through a vendor, slide off the rails through a practice, slide off the rails through being challenged with money, whatever like that. And ultimately, we have to stick to our values. And if our values are scriptural, then we're sticking to what the Lord has laid in front of us. So I think that's, in my mind, that would be the smartest thing to do, because we've tried everything else. We've tried the different programs and pragmatisms to keep somebody following the rules, and we've seen where that's gone. So I think it's a very healthy reliance on God all the way to the end is what we need.
Amen. So you have started your own studio when you were telling me about a little bit before recording. So you are trying to build a Christian business.
That's true,
So
yeah.
what kind of things are you planning on doing to make sure that, should you build up some massive industry one day that you pass on to inheritors, what kind of things are you planning on doing? What steps are you taking now, I should say, to prevent your studio from one day going the same way of Christianity today?
On the current moment, because it's such a small, my hands are involved in every project. So one of the things is a membership studio. Everybody's a member there, so we actually interview them before they actually join, and we take any monies from them. So if the projects that you're doing is not something that we really feel like we would want to be a part of, we might still encourage you to look at some other options and say, hey, this might not be a good fit for you and what you're wanting to do. Because, for example, we don't want something that is not family friendly. So I always tell people we have to be able to record with the door open. So if families walk by, they should be able to poke their head in or stop by and look or whatever to your content and be perfectly fine with it. I'm not bleeping out stuff. I'm not turning it into, I'm not, having an adult only conversation. Nope. Everybody should be kid friendly. So if kids can watch it, and by kids, I mean any random kid on the street can watch your content, then we're good to go. So that's just one of the standards that we have in place. But ultimately, I realize that we're going to have to keep refining and always revisiting and such like that in order to make sure that we are always honoring Christ with it. So, but I do realize that one of the things is, I think one of us problems that we have is as Christians and as humans, really, we want just a one and done. I'm done with that. Now I can check that box and move on. So I've put in place some standards that'll keep the company from drifting. Well, at the current moment, we have 3 members. When it becomes 30 members, we should already have reevaluated those standards before we got to 30. Because if I wake up tomorrow and it's 30, we're going to probably run into some problems. But we should be always constantly reevaluating that. And hopefully soon I'll be able to get my hands out of the daily montage, the daily activities, and I can stick with constantly reforming, interviewing my members, making sure that they're getting the standard, they're getting the quality of service that they expect all the time, and then making sure that my team is giving that quality service. So it is difficult, but I think that's something that we have to just embrace. Like, there's not going to be a lot of one and dones. I said it one time and it's finished. I wrote it down one time and I don't need to come back to it. I think that's a poor idea, but I think that's probably what Christianity yesterday did.
Yeah, great point. So, I mean, tell me more about why you started the studio in the first place. Just give me a little bit of the inside scoop.
Oh, okay. So, as you see, I like to record here at my house, and every now and then, I just wanted to get out of my house and record somewhere else. I enjoy helping content creators create good content and give them ideas and so on and so forth. But even more than that, here in Atlanta, I just wanted to get out of my house. It's like, man, I'm tired of the same background. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna change my lights behind me. Bam. Okay. So I got tired of the same background. I said, I just want to do something different. So I started looking at recording studios. So I'm here in Atlanta and they're all over the place. So I started looking, I'm like, man, there's just they're nice, but I don't know if I would want to pay for that. I don't want to pay that. And I said, well, and then when you realize the things that you were getting with them, I said, I really don't want to pay for that. So I don't want to pay an hour, $50 an hour, and I got to record and I got to man the booth, or I got to manage the recording. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So started doing some more research, started digging around, and lo and behold, I realized that I felt like there was a need for a recording studio, a podcast creator studio that focuses primarily on small businesses that need to do this kind of content, but just don't do it because they don't know what kind of microphone to get or how to get the fancy lights and whatnot. And so that was started me down a rabbit hole of trying to find a way to provide a good service for a small business owner or a solopreneur that needs to do content. They don't know how to do the content. They just want to go out and cut grass. They just want to paint nails. They just want to wash cars, whatever their business is. That's what their focus has been. So I said, oh, if I provided you a service where I'm basically your recording studio. So now you can say, yes, I have a studio that I can use to do this. Just like I have a studio in my house that I can do videos in whenever I want to. 2:00 in the morning, 2:00 in the afternoon, I can go in my studio. Now, the problem is in my studio at home, I got to do everything. But for the solopreneur and the business owner, I wanted them to say, hey, I have a studio. Like, I have a studio that I can come and work out of and do my book launch, or I can do my Zoom call, or I can do my edutainment or entertainment content, whatever it is, my course. I can do that from my studio, and they have a studio. So every month, my members have so many hours that they can record. They let me know when they want to use it. We block that time out, usually a half an hour before and a half an hour after, and they have that time. So Tuesday at 2:00, you know that you have your studio. You can go in. We have your graphics up on the screen already. We got the lights matched to your color scheme, whatever it is that you need. And if you're going to be doing an interview, we got the Zoom ready or the StreamYard ready. If you're just doing a recording, we got that ready, whatever. And then when it's done, for most of my members, we do their editing for them as well. So when everything's done, they just go back to doing whatever theirs was, writing briefs or cutting hair or whatever their business is. And we do all their edits for them. And we'll go ahead and chop it up into podcasts, shorts. We call them mic drop moments or videos on demand. If they need content for a blog post, a tweet, an e-newsletter, whatever, we'll make sure it's there for them, usually within a week. So that's Podium Studios.
That's awesome. That's super cool. And then that's based in Atlanta. So is it mostly just for individuals in the Atlanta area?
So we're right here in Marietta, Georgia, right off the Marietta Square. And I'm focusing on 4 miles around my office. So there's lots of small businesses right around there. Marietta Square is where they do a lot of movies. If they're doing movies here in Cobb County or north of Atlanta, they're going to probably do it in Marietta Square. So like tomorrow, there's a big movie being filmed in the Marietta Square tomorrow. I have no idea what it is, but we saw them setting up for it tonight when I picked my daughters up from school. So this is it. I don't need anything else. There's probably 100,000 other studios in Atlanta. You guys just go ahead and do that. I'm good right here in Marietta Square. And so that's my focus, if you will, is right here on the square in Marietta.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like the Lord has been really blessing you with that new venture, and that's super cool to hear that it's your new full-time gig, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's been fun because it's I like talking to people. Again, like I said before, I like helping people, of course, but it's a great opportunity to see how something can be a benefit to so many different persons. Like I just have someone who literally signed a contract to do 20 individual podcasts for their all of their clients. So we're going to be hopping pretty soon. Hopefully by the end of the week, we'll start booking those appointments where they're just going to be coming in, just running a podcast and helping them get started with their content. And just to be able to see like how we can help you with that. And you don't have to shift your gears or be in the mindset of like, oh, I need to understand mics. I need to understand lighting. Nope, you don't have to worry about any of that. All you need to do is come in and talk about whatever it is that you do. Your law firm, talk about your book launch, whatever. That's all you got to do. So I'm looking forward to it. I think there's going to be a lot of good opportunities. We just had a good interview today with the superintendent of Marietta City Schools, and he and the principal from the high school came in. They were outstanding conversation, and I'm looking forward because we're going to do. The studio is going to have its own podcast as well. So Podium Studio has its own podcast, and so we're going to use that one as our inaugural launch. We've recorded 2 others as well, but I think we're going to use the one with Dr. Rivera and Dr. Crum today because it was just such a great conversation because the community is really small. So the high school is, of course, a stalwart of the community. So I think interviewing and talking with the superintendent and the principal of Marietta City Schools was going to be a great launch. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So the Lord has been very faithful, and I'm hoping that next time we talk, we'll have some more great conversations.
Heck yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I know things were on the fly, but that's usually how we do it here. So, it's a lot of fun either way, but yeah, I mean, go ahead and shout out anything that you're working on that you wanted to go ahead and plug, and then we'll sign off here.
Well, hey, again, this is Jason from Dear Woke Christian. You can follow me at dearwokechristian.com. You can also follow, if you're interested in what we're doing at the studio, you can follow me on the Podium Studio on YouTube as well as the Podium Studio, thepodium.studio online as well. So those are some great ways to find me.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks again, Jason.
Hey, Connor,
and thank you for listening wherever you're consuming this podcast. We really appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys soon. Take care, everybody.